Hello and welcome to the May edition of the Business Programme on Kirklees Local Television. Trade and business matters only and all straight talk. I'm Dave Hodgson and our first guest today is Gareth Glendinning. He hails originally from Northern Ireland. He's worked as a cashier, a financial planning manager and now runs his own establishment and is a chartered financial planner. Gareth, first of all, thanks ever so much for coming on, but how do you get into financial planning? It doesn't sound something that a 12-year-old would say, oh, I'm going to be a financial planner when I grow up.
I think like most people my age who have been in the profession as long as I have, it was completely by accident. I was a cashier with Midland Bank in London many years ago, and I had a particular knack for building positive relationships with customers who would come into the branch. And after 2-3 years of doing that job, I was asked if I would want to get out of the uniform, more importantly, and take a position as a financial planning officer, sorting out mortgages.
You were a bright lad.
I tried to be.
That sounds a bit headhunted.
So I moved within Midland Bank as it was then, found I had a particular knack for talking to customers, and developed from there, really.
Good. Well, now, I'd like to get down to it straight away.
Yes.
What benefits would a company achieve by using your services?
Oh, goodness. Companies should take financial advice on a regular basis to cover a number of different areas.
When you say regular, how long would that be?
Oh, that would be from pretty much the moment they start the business, and sometimes even beforehand.
Even before you actually start trading?
Absolutely, right up until the point that the owners dispose of the business. Simply because there are a number of facets that companies have to be very aware of and plan for. Things as simple as shareholder arrangements, partnership agreements, succession planning, which should be done really from outset. Further along the company's development, they have to think about things like setting up company pension plans, and they may want to set up death and service arrangements and other employee benefits.
Yes, I've seen businessmen and businesswomen, when you start talking like that, there's a glaze goes over their eyes. There
is, unfortunately, and it is the worst thing about my profession is that you start talking about these things that are so incredibly important, and so many people just don't want to understand the need for it. Things like, for example, a partnership agreement can protect a company and make sure that it continues going if there's a fallout between the directors at some stage. I have seen instances where husband and wives have been co-directors and companies have had to be wound up at the point of divorce rather than companies being able to continue.
Right. Ooh, that sounds, you know, my mind's going tilt at the thought of things like that. I've mentioned some of your working life, obviously, when we began, but what's your advice for someone who does happen to say, I want to make a career in financial planning, I think I'm good at it, particularly what do they need from a qualification point of view?
Qualifications are quite stringent at present, even just to enter the profession. Now, there are a number of academies which are available throughout the country who will take recent graduates, school leavers, career changers even, put them through their entry-level exams, which we call the diploma, and will allow them their first experience of the profession. The diploma and the chartered qualifications can be quite onerous and very time-consuming. So the first thing that I would say to anyone interested in becoming a financial planner or a wealth manager is be prepared to study an awful lot.
A lot of homework, in other words.
Yes.
Okay, like all small organisations, I assume that you yourself have a growth plan. How do you see your company progressing in the future?
Well, my growth plan, I have 2 or 3 different versions of it over different periods. I have a 1 to 5 year growth plan, a 5 to 10 year growth plan, and a 10-year plus growth plan. Ideally, what I would like to happen in 20 years' time when I come around to disposing of my business is that I will have a substantial team of qualified, chartered financial planners, a team of paraplanners who do a lot of the support functions, and an admin team who will be there, who I will recruit over those years, who will help me grow the business.
Great. And are you looking forward in your, shall we say, less formative years to just sitting behind a desk and just being a CEO?
Absolutely not. I love dealing with my clients. I love going out and finding out all about them and their families. Where they've been on holidays, what properties they've bought overseas, all about their dog and their cat. I have all sorts of conversations with clients.
Is it that makes the difference between somebody that business people would like to take on, and somebody who just sits and talks just directly to them and doesn't involve themselves in their life?
Well, there are different types of advisor out there. There are some advisors who will only advise on investments. There are some people who will go a little bit further and who will talk about a different, wider range of topics and areas. But as a wealth manager, it's my responsibility to look after my clients' financial well-being, right through from making sure that their will is properly structured, to make sure that they have the correct protection in place, to make sure that their taxes are being done properly by their accountant. And I do have a lot of strange conversations with accountants. But making sure that everything is appropriate and planned and that clients are making proper use of their allowances. And that day-to-day regular action is really what gives me the buzz.
Finally then, Brexit. Is it making any difference to you, or will you carry on as if nothing has happened?
Well, Brexit will have an impact on my business, but a very indirect one, more to do with some of the legislation that we have to work within financial services comes through the European Union, or has historically. There may be some changes when that disappears. But again, for clients, we have to be aware of the implications of Brexit on a wider investment perspective.
And you need to be one jump ahead of the game, don't
Absolutely. Trying not to second guess the market, but trying to know roughly what's going to happen within it. Both positive and negative, because every action has an equal and opposite reaction, meaning that sometimes investments will rise, sometimes investments will fall. And that may be through changes in currency values, or it may be through demand and supply of stocks and shares. And I have to be ready for whatever happens for all of my clients.
Thanks very much, Gareth. A steep learning curve for me there, and possibly you, but I think I've got most of that. Stay with us, because next we'll be talking about the Federation of Small Businesses. Back soon. Now, our next guest is Lyndsey Whitaker, the Development Manager for the Federation of Small Businesses in West Yorkshire. It's a UK-wide membership organisation which provides advice and support to small and medium-sized businesses. It's great to have you with us. Thank you for being on the business programme, Lyndsey. Right, so first of all, can you tell us about the research that the FSB has been conducting with its members regarding the big question for everybody at the moment in business, Brexit?
It's a big issue, and it's the biggest survey we've ever undertaken with our members across the UK. We've been looking at 4 different strands of how Brexit will impact on businesses. So we've been looking at labour and skills, we've been looking at future trade arrangements, we've been looking at regulation, and we've also been looking at EU funding and business support. We've been undertaking this research since October last year, and we're now starting to drip feed those results in terms of 4 separate reports which have looked at each of those strands in more detail.
But it's a question of how long's a piece of string, trying to anticipate what's going to happen. How easy or difficult has it been in sort of forward thinking the government on their behalf and then finding out whether you're right or wrong about it afterwards?
It's not so much predicting what the government negotiations are going to come out with. It's more or less trying to get the feel of what businesses are experiencing at the moment. So what are their current labour issues that they have? How much EU labour do they actually employ at the moment? What would be the impact if there were any restrictions on that labour? So it's looking at the impact on the operational and day-to-day issues that businesses are facing, regardless of what actually comes out of the negotiations.
So what difference has Brexit vote made to your members, and how are they preparing for it? I suppose to some of them it was a bit of a shock.
It was a large shock, and a large economic shock at that, and you saw that with the value of sterling plummeting immediately after.
Yeah.
But business confidence, and particularly business confidence in Yorkshire and Humber, has actually been increasing. So there is actually a light at the end of the tunnel for small businesses.
Bit of a conundrum, that, isn't
it?
Yeah,
yeah, exactly. So we know that business confidence, it did take an initial hit, probably because of the level of uncertainty that there was in terms of how quickly the exit would be, and then what the negotiations would be and how they would impact on businesses. But generally, businesses have battened down and business as usual.
Because for all the foretelling of doom I don't see any evidence of it at the moment.
Yeah, I mean, we actually thought that there would be an impact on trade immediately, particularly with EU countries.
Yeah.
But what we actually saw was that trade actually increased. So trade with European countries actually went up.
But that was more to do with the devaluation of the pound, I think, wasn't it?
Yeah, it did have some impact on it. We do know, for example, that manufacturing businesses that were importing from one country in terms of raw materials and then exporting to an EU country, they got the double whammy because they were paying more for the raw materials and then they were actually losing it on the price of the goods that they'd manufactured.
So how important is retaining access to the single market and free trade for that matter, particularly as it seems the other EU members are intent on punishing us for leaving?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, what we would say is that the value of the agreement that we've got at the moment and the access to the single market is very much about the tariffs. Now, what we want to see out of all of this is that whatever system is introduced in terms of the agreements that are made is that it either has no tariff or it has very, very low tariffs. We think that that is going to be a likely outcome, but obviously we can't preempt it, and certainly with the mutterings that have been coming out of the Commission
recently, it doesn't look like it's going to be anything less than a bumpy ride.
It will be a tough negotiation.
Yeah.
Clearly there might be some give and take in terms of some other issues, but that is what businesses actually want, is access to low tariffs, preferably no tariffs at all.
Yeah, let's talk about free movement of labour, because it's constantly being referred to, isn't it, both inside and outside Parliament. When it comes to Brits working in Europe, and for that matter, European people working in the UK, what's the feeling on the ground with smaller businesses? Is this going to be a car crash in slow motion, or do you think it'll just sail through and nothing will happen?
We don't think it will be a car crash, but we are aware of the significant impact that any removal of EU citizens from the UK labour market would have, because we know that 1/5 of our members actually employ EU citizens in their businesses. Now, an awful lot of that is down to finding people with the right skill levels that they need for that job. Now, we know that there are a proportion of members that are reliant on EU migrant labour for filling low-skilled jobs that they have struggled to fill with local labour, and we also know on the flip side that you've got businesses that are importing high-level skills that you can't currently get in the UK. So the reason why businesses have been more fluid in terms of the labour that they take on has really all been about the skills gaps and filling those skills gaps.
Right. Well, Article 50 has been triggered and the process of negotiation with the EU is now just about beginning, isn't it? What does the FSV want from these negotiations?
What we want is the low tariffs or no tariffs at all. We also want some guarantee that the EU labour that is currently within the UK will get some sort of citizenship rights to remain in the UK. They are, after all, paying taxation into the system. So that is fundamentally what we are trying to do. What we don't want to do is to see anything that is going to be another shock to businesses and basically affect the way that they operate. So removing the labour and also putting up the tariffs of trading with EU countries and non-EU countries as well, that would have a detrimental impact if that was to happen.
So if it all goes, shall we say, belly up, what's going to happen?
Who knows? The one thing that we do know is that small businesses are risk takers and they will always batten down the hatches and deal with whatever landscape they have to deal with, whether that's regulatory or not.
Yeah, the great word, strategically. Now, what are you planning for the future of the FSB?
For the FSB, we have just introduced a brand new membership category for start-up businesses. We've got a huge emphasis on supporting pre-start businesses and younger businesses, so that's businesses that have been trading for less than 2 years. That's been a really big change to the FSB. Apart from that, we've just been going through a massive restructure across the UK.
My thanks to my studio guest today, Lyndsey Whitaker, Development Manager at the Federation of Small Businesses, and Gareth Glendinning, Chartered Financial Planner. Also to producer Barry Davenport, Business Director Nikki Matthews, and to Production Manager Kyle Warwick and his entire and indefatigable crew. But mostly, thank you for watching KLTV Business Programme. Success to all your ventures, and join me in a month's time for the next programme in the business programme series. Bye bye for now.